Welcome to Righting Wrongs here at Hudgell Solicitors. I'm Keith Phillips, and joining me to discuss the latest developments in the investigations into the medical treatment carried out by orthopaedic surgeon Yaser Jabbar at Great Ormond Street Hospital is our senior solicitor, Caroline Murgatroyd. Welcome, Caroline.
Good morning.
Now, Caroline, you're supporting many families in relation to the ongoing investigation into 721 children treated by Mr. Jabbar between 2017 and 2022. First of all, could you explain what concerns the Royal College of Surgeons has about the care those children were provided with?
So the Royal College of Surgeons was invited by Great Ormond Street Hospital to conduct a review of their lower limb reconstruction service. And as part of that review, they also looked at a sample of patients that were treated by Mr. Jabbar to consider if there were any concerns about the care they received. And as a result of that review, they identified a number of concerns across the patients, which included poor decision-making, failure to obtain informed consent, poor standard of surgery, failure to identify post-op concerns. And as a result of that, there were children that were left with leg length discrepancies, nerve pains, amputations or risk of amputations, and the need for further surgeries and treatment. And as a result of that, Great Ormond Street Hospital then decided to open up their own review into all the patients that received treatment from him, and that review is currently ongoing.
Now, they identified unacceptable standards. They also identified children who had received unnecessary treatment.
They did. Some of the comments by the Royal College of Surgeons were that they could see no justification for the surgeries that were performed.
Now, it's just over 6 months since it was revealed that Great Ormond Street Hospital was taking the step of having the treatment of those children independently reviewed. What's happened over that period of time since?
So since that time, Great Ormond Street have commenced their investigation. As of January, we understand that they have completed a review of just over 200 of the patients that were seen by Great Ormond Street Hospital. We have been contacted by a number of families concerned about the treatment that was received. Some of them have received the reports from Great Ormond Street Hospital and some have not. And the ones where they have not received the report, they just don't know if the treatment their children received was poor or not, and they're desperate for answers.
For those families who have received the report, what does that report tell them?
So of the families that we represent, where they have received a report, almost half of those reports have identified that their children suffered severe harm. And I've spoken to a number of parents who are genuinely shocked that their children have been harmed, because until they got that report, they just didn't know. The other reports have identified moderate to mild harm, and one or two where there was no harm identified. So it's a really concerning picture.
Well, why do you think there was only a small number of people who sought legal aid before Great Ormond Street Hospital announced the review of all 721 children?
I think it's important to stress that these were children who had very complicated underlying conditions. For most of them, it was anticipated that it would be a difficult road in their treatment, that there may be setbacks. And then when things on the face of it started to go wrong, they didn't really question it because they were receiving treatment at Great Ormond Street Hospital, one of the most renowned hospitals around the world. And therefore they just didn't make the leap to consider that the treatment might have been due to poor care rather than just complications that couldn't have been avoided.
And over the last 6 months, you've actually had parents come to you who previously had no concerns whatsoever until they started reading about the reviews.
Absolutely. Many of them have waited because actually even though they know this review is ongoing, they just didn't think that their children may be the ones that have suffered harm. So it's been really, really shocking to some of them and really distressing.
Well, over the last 6 months, all of the parents, all of the families who've come to you with concerns, have you been able to support them?
We have. So we're providing varying levels of support at this stage. Some families have just come to us because they haven't got the report yet and they weren't quite sure what they should be doing. So we've been able to support them through that process. With other families where they've had a report and that's identified harm, then we've been able to assist them and advise them about a potential claim and what that involves.
Well, there's a point there to highlight. I think it's really important to say not all families will have had documentation yet confirming harm had been caused to their children.
Absolutely. So as of January, our understanding is there's still 500 parents and children that are waiting for their reports. So we've been approached by a number of families, and those numbers are growing on a weekly basis, whether they've had the report or not. But we expect that number to increase as these reports come through over the next 12 months.
And just to pick up on something you said earlier, the majority who receive a report, there is confirmation of harm.
Absolutely. Almost every report that we've seen identifies mild to severe harm, and actually half of them severe harm. And we're talking about amputations, the need for multiple corrective surgeries, significant leg length discrepancies. So these are really serious injuries that these children have sustained that it appears should not have happened.
Well, for those 500 families who have yet to receive a letter, I mean, what advice would you have for parents who are still waiting for the details on the independent investigations into their children's care?
Well, there's two sides. There's the treatment for their children and legal advice. So in respect to legal advice, I recommend that they contact a lawyer just to discuss their child's care, to discuss their concerns, because they can be supported through the process, because this is a difficult process for parents to navigate. And also it's really important that if their children have got ongoing symptoms, that they're in contact with Great Ormond Street Hospital, who have provided a support service, so that they can see if they need to be referred elsewhere, because the most important thing is that the children get the treatment that they need.
And from the cases that you've seen so far, there have been a number of issues which have consistently appeared, which you think may continue once more information is released to more parents.
Yes, so the consistent findings are failure to consider the most appropriate treatment path for that child, failure to consult with colleagues in a multidisciplinary approach, failure to advise of all the risks and benefits of undergoing surgery, or actually not having treatment at all. And that's been a common theme we've seen, is that actually surgery has been provided where perhaps it wasn't needed, or certainly that form of surgery wasn't needed.
And alternatives were available.
Absolutely.
Caroline, for parents who are waiting for that report to come to them about their children's care, they don't have to wait for that to arrive before seeking legal advice.
No, they don't need to wait for a report from Great Ormond Street Hospital before contacting a lawyer. We're supporting a number of families who haven't received a report yet, just to help them through the process, because it's a really worrying time for them. So I would certainly recommend that they contact a lawyer just to have that additional support.
And Caroline, for those families where it's been confirmed, where they know their children suffered harm, how are you currently supporting them?
So we are currently obtaining the medical records. We are instructing independent experts to review the treatment that their child received, because it's really important that we establish if there are any further failures in their care that haven't already been identified. And crucially, we need to investigate the extent of harm that's been caused to their child, because we'll need to be able to estimate the impact upon the child that this harm has had well into the future, as well into adulthood. So the next steps will be to gather all that evidence and submit the allegations to Great Ormond Street Hospital and invite them to admit liability. And importantly, what we really want to do is try and secure interim payments of compensation for the children, so that if they need therapy or treatment, then they can access that now, whilst the full and final settlement of the claim is awaited, because that could take many years, because the children are going to need time to develop before probably their prognosis can be accurately predicted into the future.
When do you anticipate Great Ormond Street Hospital will be served with legal cases claiming compensation?
So we've already started that process, and I anticipate that over the next few months, the vast majority of the cases that we currently have will be notified to Great Ormond Street Hospital formally so that they can commence their formal investigations into the clinical negligence claims, so that hopefully we can secure interim payments for the children and access the therapy and rehabilitation that they need.
And just outline to me what interim payments are and why they are important to families and children who've been harmed.
So when bringing a claim for clinical negligence, the ultimate resolution to that case is a payment of compensation. Now, you can only settle a claim in full and final settlement when you are fairly sure of the outcome for that child into the future as a result of the treatment they've received. So interim damages allows a child or their family to access their compensation earlier than a full and final settlement so that they can use those damages to fund treatment, therapy, rehabilitation so they can improve their current condition whilst the full and final settlement is awaited.
What do you think Great Ormond Street Hospital should be doing now?
So we want to see prompt investigations, early admissions of liability and early agreements to interim payments so that children can get the treatment that they need.
And with respect to the reviews into the care given to those children, does it need to be speeded up?
I think it's very difficult for Great Ormond Street Hospital because they do have hundreds of patients to review. I am aware that as of January this year, that they had reviewed approximately 220 children so far, which means there's 500 more children to review. And my understanding is they're hoping to complete that by the end of this year. I would obviously encourage Great Ormond Street Hospital and their reviewers to review these patients as quickly as they can because there are so many families waiting for an answer.
Caroline, we know there are more than 700 cases to review. You've mentioned more than 200 have already been carried out. What's the situation with those 500?
So we don't know how many have been completed since January, and I think it would be, I would encourage Great Ormond Street Hospital to release updated details, not just to the families, but to the public as well, because I think there is a wider concern, a wider interest here as to the treatment that's been provided to children by Great Ormond Street Hospital. And I think what we want to see is transparency about the degrees of harm that have been identified, the concerns that have been found in those reviews, because as a law firm, we only see a snapshot of the treatment these children received and the concerns about their care. And I think there needs to be more transparency about that across the board so that the families and the public are aware of the type of harm that was caused here.
Caroline, thanks very much for the updates. Caroline Murgatroyd, Senior Medical Negligence Solicitor here at Hudgell Solicitors, who is supporting families whose children were treated by the orthopaedic surgeon Yaser Jabbar at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Thanks for listening to Righting Wrongs. And if you need further information, head to our website, hudgellsolicitors.co.uk.
Thank you.